Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to start by welcoming everyone. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you that were here yesterday, welcome back. Glad to see you all here. My name is Rachel Clark. I'm the president of the Food Law Society who organized this conference. And I just want to quickly say thank you again to our main supporters, Animal Welfare Approved, the Harvard Milbank Tweed Fund, the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic, the Laflamme Center, and Let's Talk About Food. I also want to especially thank our media sponsor, the Boston Globe, and Pete & Gerry's Organic Eggs for providing eggs for breakfast this morning. We're also going to hear from Jessie Laflamme from Pete & Gerry's today. I also am now going to invite up Emily Broad-Lieb from the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic, and she's going to do a brief recap of yesterday's events for those of you that missed it. And we're also going to be posting all of the panels and lectures from yesterday and today online shortly after the conference, so you can also find them there. Thanks for coming.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here and to be starting off the second day of what is an amazing conference. For those of you who were here yesterday, let's hear a round of applause if you thought it was a good conference. It was incredible. We really appreciate everyone braving the weather to be here. So I'm Emily Broad-Lieb. I actually direct the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic, which is a experiential learning program for law students to get involved in the food system and in food policy. And we do work really at the local, state, and federal level with government, nonprofits, food policy councils, trying to help them better understand the laws that apply to the food system and work to change those laws in ways that are better for producers and consumers and food access and a lot of the things we're talking about yesterday and today. So I just wanted to first say a really warm thank you and congratulations to the students who really did the bulk of putting on this event. So the Student Food Law Society. And I wanted to give a quick recap for those who were not able to be here yesterday. So we had an amazing day. We started off, yesterday was really focused on kind of health and nutrition claims and the nutrition facts label and really talking about what those things mean. We were started off by Michael Roberts, who talked about the history of labeling and sort of gave us a really nice framework to think about where labeling has come from, and starting out with things that really came from like religious beliefs and kosher and stuff like that, moving through safety, nutrition, and sort of food systems issues that we're concerned about today. And then we heard from Michael Jacobson from Center for Science and the Public Interest, and we got some really great examples of ways that labels really don't often work and are really misleading in terms of what they say and some of the pictures. We had a fantastic panel that talked about some of the ways that we could really modernize the labels and what better labels would look like. And then we had an amazing keynote address by Urvashi from Consumers Union, and talking about really, I mean, I thought I knew a lot about this topic and I knew a lot about labeling from working in this field, but I learned so much last night, and I'm really gonna ask questions now before I pay more for something that sounds like it's good, like organic dry cleaning or hypoallergenic lotions, which, just to let you know, neither of those have any real meaning. So if you missed last night, you should ask Urvashi about that. So yesterday was, I think, more focused on really the health and nutrition side of things, and today we're really going to move into talking about some of the claims around methods of production, sustainability, animal welfare. So the other set of things that are really being battled out on packages now and in marketing, and how food is being really marketed to people, and what we're getting for our money when we pay more for those things. So I'm really excited for today, and then at the end we're going to have a panel that's going to try to wrap all of these threads together and talk a little bit about these, bring back in the health and nutrition claims and tie it all together with some of the methods of production. So I just wanted to give a little recap and sort of welcome everyone to Harvard Law School and to Harvard University. And with that, I'm going to turn it over, and I can't remember who's going first. It's Jessie? Jessie Laflamme from Pete & Gerry's Eggs.
Great. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. So I'd like to talk about the voluntary food labeling process, conception to approval. And this is a case study example, but it's in our case, it's as much history of our farm and our business. And Pete & Gerry's is my family's farm. So I'm CEO and to get promoted to president too, but it's actually my family's farm. I'm very proud of that. So these are our two sort of main products that we sell. Organic eggs, Pete and Gerry's organic eggs, and Nellie's cage-free eggs. So I'd like to really frame this discussion in this context, this quote that I found on the Organic Trade Association website. And I really think this kind of encompasses what we're doing with our voluntary labeling and our company. And Urvashi spoke about this, or all the speakers spoke a little bit about this yesterday. So to read this, just the quote here, our survey indicates that more shoppers understand the environmental, social, and economic implications of their choices. The result is a sizable number of consumers who will purchase typically more expensive ethical products even in economically challenging times. Paying more for a label. So Pete and Gerry's eggs, how did we get here? So in the mid-1990s, actually I should step back. So we're a fourth generation egg farm. I'm the fourth generation farming in our community. And in the mid-1990s, our small conventional caged egg farm that I grew up on was nearly forced into bankruptcy by the predatory practices of a very large factory egg farm in Maine. And some of you may know this name, Jack DaCosta. Some of you may know Salmonella Jack DaCosta. He is, actually his own son described him as the poster child for bad agriculture. I'm not kidding. In a magazine. So this is an individual, you just can't make this kind of thing up. Fake life insurance for his illegal workers, 20 illegal workers in a trailer with no plumbing, no heat. In the mid-1990s, the Secretary of Labor, the practices were actually discovered. Robert Reich actually called his farm in Maine the worst sweatshop in America. It's just unimaginable what this guy would do. So if he was doing that to his workers, you can imagine what he was doing to the marketplace. In the mid-1990s, he was, or earlier, under the first Bush administration, he was exporting eggs to China, oiling them and putting a 6-month expiration on, and it was subsidized by the US government. That ended with the Clinton administration immediately. Export Enhancement Program, I believe they called it. So he had millions of eggs that all of a sudden were going out of the country and turned in. And my family had a small conventional egg business in northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont, not that many hens, and he went after our markets. I remember he visited a 12,000 square foot independently owned market near us that we'd done business with for years, decades, and offered the owner 6 months of free eggs if he would get rid of us. So those are the kind of practices that we had to deal with, nearly forced us into bankruptcy. And it's also worth noting Urvashi's conversation or discussion yesterday talked about this baseline. It always surprises me how little the general population knows about egg production in this country, conventional egg production, the baseline, so to speak. And it is unbelievable. If you were a conventional egg producer today and you were going to build a barn, you would be foolish if you didn't build a cage barn that would hold 250,000 caged chickens in a single building. It's really no longer family farming in any sense of the word. It's very large corporations. So there's actually about 180 egg companies, read egg farms, in the country supplying 95% of the eggs. And if you think about that, there's 1,000 dairy farms just in Little Vermont, right? Or nearly 1,000. There's the top 10 egg companies, read egg farms, are supplying 50% of the eggs in this country. And their average hen numbers, about 15 million. 15 million chickens in cages. The production conditions are horrific. I mean, each hen has 2/3 of a sheet of paper to live its entire life in, a wire cage. The houses used to be designed such that the cages were on the second floor and there was a basement where the manure would just fall and build up for a year, which is awful. You can imagine what that smells like and what the air conditions is like. They've sort of improved that by a system they call stack air, where they now fill the basement all the way up to the ceiling with these battery cages, and they have belts that now remove the manure out of the building. But the density is so high in these buildings, the 250,000 hens in a single building, that they actually have to force air, force air in behind the hens, or they would suffocate and overheat. So that's, to give everyone some context, that's the baseline. And we were competing with a very nasty individual working in that baseline. So our farm and business today exists only because of the growing consumer preference for ethical products. And we've made, as we got out of the conventional egg business, we've made a very deliberate choice, as a philosophical choice, family choice, to not keep a single hen in cages or sell a single egg from hens in cages. And maybe that doesn't sound extraordinary, but looking at all the more mainstream competitors that we deal with, organic and cage-free humane egg production is just a little sidebar. They think it's funny that we're not in caged egg production. It's, that this is all we do. And another point, our family history in agriculture has really informed the values by which we operate our business now. And there's two parts to that. We transitioned to organic and cage-free, and when we found this window to continue to operate in agriculture, we first started out adding flocks and building barns on our own farm. And we soon realized, because we were sort of the wimpy kid who got beat up, and we were lifting weights. And we weren't going to be beat again. We were going to be a really competitive organic egg producer, because we knew these guys. DeCosta was going to be an organic egg producer, and we're not going to let this happen again. And we started doing this, and we said, wait a minute, stop. We can't. This is not organic. This is not what our consumers expect of us. We are not going to keep building barns. We are not going to keep adding flocks. This is not the way organic is supposed to be. Organic is family farms. And so instead of building, we actually started partnering with family farms. And now we have over 40 family farms that we're partnered with throughout the Northeast to supply the growing demand for the eggs that we sell, which for me personally is a pretty remarkable and very valuable part of what we do. When I work with when we partner with a family farm, I should step back and say, personally, because of my parents' experience, it makes me angry that a small family farm can't survive just because it's small. I think that's wrong, very wrong in this country, and it's a major problem with agriculture. And when we partner with these family farms, I see my parents in the early days, and I see an opportunity that we now have with them and for them. So step one in this case study, conception. So mid-1990s, how can our farm survive? How can we stay in agriculture? So that was the question. That was the conception. So it wasn't the marketing team of Coca-Cola sitting around the boardroom saying, I think we can do a line extension on Coke. People are really into bamboo. It'll be Coke bamboo. This was, what are we going to do? How are we going to survive? And we're not that sharp, but we did realize that producing in the market, in the commodity cage market that we were in, we had no identity and we had no values in what we were doing. Nobody wanted to help us, right? Nobody wanted to buy our product for any reason. So we realized that it was branding and values what we needed, and that's creating a connection with consumers through an identity that is supported by values and practices. So identity. We are a real family farm. That was easy enough. So Gerry, my dad, has always overseen the care of our hens on the farm. Peter, the Pete of Pete and Gerry's, he has always overseen packaging the eggs and getting them to customers. And for our cage-free eggs, Nellie was my pet chicken when I was 5. And there's a picture of me with Nellie on my bike on the inside of a lot of our cartons, which incidentally, most people don't know this, but chickens actually love riding on bikes. So if you have a bike and you have a chicken, you should bring them together. And you put the chicken on the handlebars. And I truly believe this is chicken nirvana, because the chicken is perching, which is a very natural behavior, and she's flying. which is an unnatural behavior, but it's a behavior that chickens would love to have. So try it if you have a chicken. So then values. We believe in organic. My family believes in organic. Transitioning fit our family's way of life. So my parents were maybe could be called flower children. A lot of organic gardening went on. Variety, I'm sure. My full name is Jesse Colin Laflamme. It's actually named after the folk singer Jesse Colin Young, for those of you that know. Yeah. And incidentally, Jesse Colin Young, just found out, has a organic coffee plantation in Hawaii. So yeah, so that was pretty cool. They're calling him up and saying, your namesake has an organic egg farm in New Hampshire. Namesake, not love child, namesake. So we believe in treating animals humanely. We had cages. We hated them. And I can honestly say that. It was what we had to do because there was no other choice then, right? Or very little to run an egg farm. We truly hated the cages. And we would raise the day-old chicks basically in a cage-free, open environment and then have to put them in cages. And that was always, we hated that. That had to do it. And finally, we believe in the importance of real family farms and in the importance of not becoming a factory farm, not being a factory farm. So step 2 is changing the practices. We tore the cages out of our barns and destroyed them, which is a memory that will stay with me for my entire life. But when the last cage when the torch went through the last cage and we crushed it. So in terms of organic, of course, organic grain, no pesticides, no medications, no GMOs in the feed. And we earned certifications for our practices, organic and humane treatment, which in our case is certified humane. And it meant understanding the standards and meeting the standards, which, as a farmer, you don't always know what is the most humane for the hens or what are the best practices. So it was understanding, oh yeah, we need to have perches that are a certain number of perches that are 16 inches above the floor so that the mean hens can't get at the timid hens who are going to go up there and perch. Things like that, understanding the standards, modifying barns where we needed to. And then we began, as we grew, as I said, we began to partner with other family farms rather than increasing the size of our farm. So step 3, label approval. Organic, USDA National Organic Program. Relatively straightforward, regulates organic practices, but with, as Ravashi said yesterday, limited welfare regulations. Very limited, remarkably. They don't have anything that says how many hens you should have, the density, how much space should a hen have in a barn, how much space, they currently don't have any regulations on how much space should a hen have outside. So it's, it's limited. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but it's certainly, in our opinion, it is critical that it's strengthened, and strengthened soon. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So cage-free, when we were doing Nellies, this was a wake-up call. Truth in labeling, FTC truth in labeling. We couldn't believe that you could just put cage-free on a label and you didn't have to call somebody to come check it out and verify it. And that was frightening because we know the people in our industry, and not only would they cheat to make money, but they would actually cheat for sport, to laugh. Look at these idiots, we're just going to put the cage-free label on, and they're going to pay more for this. So one of our first moves when we learned about it was to become certified humane, to go through their process. And if we weren't the first, I'm sure somebody else would have been, but I'm quite proud of the fact that we were first. And I think we led a tremendous number of our now competitors into this standard. It has the highest number of hens in the country. Millions of hens in the country are on this program, and they do have scientific-based, strong standards, valid standards. So finally, approval, omega-3, which is just a value added, and that's basically flaxseed or flax meal that's fed to the hens as part of their ration. And the hens incidentally love it, and sometimes the flax clumps together, and the hen will go after it and hanging out of her beak, and they're chasing each other because they all want the flax. There's a slight problem with that, though, because they can overdose on flax, and the egg will actually taste fishy. So we get that comment every once in a while when a hen has too much flax. But we were, so we had the FDA come to our farm last year as part of the egg safety rule. They're coming to every farm. And they checked out our labels. And one thing that we learned, we didn't even realize, we had 2 eggs contain 400 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids. And FDA said, that's wrong. It's 1 serving. You have to say 1 egg contains 200 milligrams of omega-3. Because that's what a serving is on the label. Okay, sure, yep, we'll do that. Do you need to see our testing records of the omega-3 levels? No. What? How, really? They had absolutely no interest in seeing that we had validated our omega-3 claim, which I thought was fascinating. And then no health claims around omega-3, which I completely understand as well, and we'd never have done that. There aren't studies out there saying that omega-3 eggs are heart healthy. Someday, I hope that there will be, and then we can make that connection. So they didn't care about our testing. Interesting. So voluntary food labeling on eggs. Our goal, simply to appeal to values-led consumers by communicating the positive attributes that differentiate our eggs and our business. So organic and or humane for Nellies. And the nutritional enhancement, feeding the flax to the hens to increase the omega-3 levels. The challenges, of course, are consumer confusion. And those of you who have been to an egg case recently in a mainstream supermarket, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure many of you feel the same way that I do when I go to buy wine. It's just a whole lot of labels, and that one looks shiny. I'm going to buy that one. So there's a lot of consumer confusion. And there's industry competitor integrity issues, the cheaters, the pretenders. That is going on, believe me, and particularly when there's no third-party certification behind any of these label claims. Talked a little bit about it, but the lack of regulation. So nobody's checking up on this other than those third-party certifiers. And then, in my mind, one of the biggest issues is the depth of values that can be communicated in a label, and I'll get to that in a second. These are some of the sort of confusing labels, and Carter, I think, will probably speak to some of these. But my favorite was the animal care certified, which is the caged egg industry. They took one hen out of the cage, and they said, "We are great." A little check mark. And they were sued by, I believe, Compassion Over Killing, and had to change it to United Egg Producers Certified, which is a little bit better, but still irritating. These guys are just unbelievable. And then we have claims like all natural eggs, Land O'Lakes, friends at Land O'Lakes. So, how many? I wonder, how many consumers, because they're all natural, assume that they're in an all natural environment, or they can at least exercise natural behaviors. No. Battery cages, big battery cages in Connecticut, 4 million hens, all natural though. So we're hoping that maybe some labeling changes will happen in the near future, where they'll have to say from caged hens, from cage-free, from whatever the practice may be. And then finally, there's also third-party certifiers that, in my opinion, are compromising standards, and Free Farmed is one of them. They're actually they're putting that logo on enriched cages, which are better than regular cages, but they're still big cages, big wire cages, little place for the hens to scratch, little curtain for them to go behind and lay an egg maybe, but they're still giant cages. I've been in one of these buildings with 125,000 hens. So, that label should be great, but it's, I believe they've compromised it. So again, adding to consumer confusion. So what do these labels mean, and what can they validate, or can they validate all consumer expectations? And that's the challenge. Organic, small family farms, stringent animal welfare, hens able to be on pasture, local farms, cage-free, free-range, pastured, what do they mean? And because these labels can represent such a range of practices and systems, to define an ethical product, our ability to succeed and separate ourselves depends on our communication, marketing. Our largest you know, we are not perfect, but we're very good, I believe. And our largest competitor in this market is a supplier to McDonald's on one hand. They have a big McDonald's farm with 3.5 million hens. And then down the road, they have a organic egg farm that is at this moment certified. And there's 180,000 organic hens in each barn. There's 5 barns, 50 feet apart, and the hens never see grass, never go outside. You know, how many consumers imagine that that is organic? So there's challenges. Again, as I said before, the regulations need to be strengthened. And it looks like we're moving that way. It's just moving at the speed of government. So that's unfortunate. So at this point, it's communication. What do we do? What do we do better? We're not a factory farm. We're partnered with family farms. And then the more that we interact with our consumers, the more we understand their concerns and expectations. It's very much a dialogue. It's fluid, and it's also evolving. And that's to this point. You know, we will change and improve everything that we do as consumer expectations evolve. It's critical that we do that. I believe in that, and that's, Urvashi spoke about that, the top getting taller yesterday. So trust in these labels. You know, the increasing trend of ethical purchases, it really is a remarkable development in our consumer culture. You know, we can't understate the value of this. Had DaCosta put my family in the situation that he did 5 years earlier, I'm not sure that we could have morphed and changed our practices and survived. This is a relatively new phenomenon where people are caring so much. This is huge. You know, this is a huge opportunity, but it hinges on trust, and we must not violate that trust that the trend is based upon. So where are we going? You know, Pete and Gerry's our future. Very excited about a couple things that we're starting this year. Diversified farm pastured egg production. So smaller flocks, pastured flocks, flocks with massive amounts of pasture, 1,000 birds on 2.5 acres of pasture, sort of European standard, UK standard. So mobile houses that get dragged around, again, over 100 square feet of pasture per hen. And it's also exciting in the sense that it's lower capital need, so that we hope to attract more younger farmers. Instead of building a big barn, which is very capital intensive, that they could build or purchase a mobile house, you know, easier to put together, you know, don't need an engineer, all these things. So it'll cost less per hen to do this, which will create more opportunities for small family farmers. As we know, there's more younger people getting excited about farming now. Educated younger people, you know, went to college, worked in the city, hated it, want to be a farmer. So this could be a nice complement to a diversified farm, a CSA. We can partner with them and take all of their eggs, or all their eggs that they can't sell on their CSA, for example, extra eggs, and provide a cash flow for them. And then finally, non-GMO project verified cage-free eggs is something that we're actually growing our first flock of chicks under this program right now. And it's a rigorous, I'm sure many of you have heard of this, but it's a rigorous program to test the feed supply to make sure that it's GMO free. And I promise you, it's very hard in conventional grains. It's very hard to find GMO free grains, chicken feed in this country. So, you know, we hope, we believe, we know that there's a future for these markets, and this is where we're going. So thank you. And this is certainly fun.
Before we have time for some questions. Just a reminder that this is being videotaped, so if you have any questions you don't want to show up on the internet, probably not the best time to ask them. Can you please state your name and affiliation and walk up to one of the 2 mics we have around the room if you have any questions. Thank you.
Hi, Jesse. My name is Rachel Greenberger. I'm the director of startup and dad thing called Food Soul. I'm a loyal customer. After today, I'm a loyaler customer. I wanted to touch on one of the last points you made about the mobile, the sort of egg mobiles or the mobile houses for the hens. and that it's a lower capital cost for young farmers entering the marketplace. Is part of your strategy moving forward that you want to have an educational component and be a Stone Barns of sorts or a Shelburne Farms or a place where farmers can go and learn how to do what you're doing? Because I think you're seen as a leader in the marketplace in terms of being truthful and sort of helping consumers understand. I was curious if that's part of your strategy.
That's a great question. In fact, I see that we have to be. We can't, and even with the partner farms that we work with now, we're very involved in giving them understanding of how it needs to work, and for several reasons. One, we don't want them to fail. I mean, that's awful. Two, we want the quality of our eggs to be there to match all the other farmers that we're working with in our own eggs, and and finally, their practices. We need to. I actually just met with our farmers earlier this week on the Mid-Atlantic, that group, and they, I let them understand that they're the custodians of our brand. They are our brand, and each one of them needs to take care of the hens the way our customers, our consumers expect that they should care for their hens, not take care of their hens, care for their hens, and because they hold our brand and the fate of all the other farmers around them in their hands. So absolutely, it would be a major educational and certain, not just educational, but a service component as well. Going out to visit the farms, and we do that right now, going once a week, every other week, check on things, see how it's going.
Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Adam Yankowskis. I'm a resident of Cambridge, and with your vast network of farms, you said 40 today, and that might grow. How do you work to ensure that the farms that you're working with are holding up the standards that you see? It's my impression, it may be wrong, that a lot of the certifications can be costly for smaller farms to do.
Exactly, yeah, and it can be. I mean, it's to have a certified humane inspector come out to a farm can be $300, $500. So I think there's a challenge there, and I think that would be an expense that should be borne by us, the egg marketing company. So that would be a component of it. If you have 10,000 hens or 9,000 hens or 15,000 hens, to have that inspection fee, no big deal. But if you have 1,000 hens or 3,000 hens, all of a sudden that's a different story. So we would take on the cost of the certification, and then again making sure that they meet the expectations after the certifier has left would be on us, to the service person, to go and see them, check on them, make sure the hens are productive and healthy, and they're being taken care of the way they should be.
Hi, thanks very much for this presentation. It's been really informative, especially since I don't work in this particular field, but I work in fisheries. So I direct the sustainable seafood programs in fisheries and aquaculture at the New England Aquarium. My name is Megan Jeans, by the way. And but what's really interesting, there are definitely a lot of parallels with aquaculture and some of the smaller aquaculture farms around the world, and sort of how they can be acting more collectively and whatnot. But I'm also really interested in sort of the omega-3 claims too, and whether or not, it's great that you're looking at GMO feed products, and I'm wondering too if you've had any conversations around sort of the omega-3s and the sort of the fisheries that they're coming from, the aquaculture facilities that they're coming from, and sort of the sustainability elements around those as well.
So that I understand your question, you're wondering about omega-3, the sustainability of it, or I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So a big part, and the big part of one of the criteria in sort of a lot of the aquaculture sustainability certifications is sort of looking at the feed and where does that feed come from, and sort of the feed conversion ratios and all that stuff. But
right.
But it's also sort of a lot of the omega-3 products that we have out there are coming from fisheries that may or may not be managed well, or may or may not be farmed well. And so I'm curious, if sort of there's obviously a lot of issues here to cover when you're producing a product like an egg.
Right.
But I'm wondering if that is sort of on your radar at all, is sort of looking at sort of the sustainability of the omega-3 that you're...
Yeah, and it's a little bit easier for us because we, as part of Certified Humane, it's a 100% vegetarian diet for the hens. So the omega-3 comes from flax rather than fish sources. But that's not universally the case, because there are now, of course, there's some Land O'Lakes type producers who are doing omega-3 in cages and no certification. So they're buying bags of, we're feeding flax meal. They're buying bags of some kind of something that they dump into the feed that enhances the omega. God only knows what it is. I actually should look into it just for my edification, but yeah, I'm scared to. So it's definitely an issue, but we're fortunate that hens love flaxseed too much sometimes, so it's easy to get, relatively easy to get omega-3 through a vegetarian source.
Any other question? Oh.
Hi, Julie Morneau, entrepreneur and consumer. If you run into a situation where one of your partner farms inadvertently did end up purchasing GMO grains and fed them to the flocks, what would happen to those chickens? How would you manage the process of keeping them from getting into your food supply?
Sure, that's a good question. Right now, the way that our system is set up is that with the partner farms, it is a true partnership because in virtually all the cases, we actually continue to own and feed the hens, and we pay the farmer to take care of them for us. And that's done for a number of reasons, for the farmer to mitigate the risk and mitigate the huge investment that they've made. Because hens don't always lay as well as they should, so the farmer has a mortgage and he's having to feed hens that aren't laying well. It could be a real challenge, so I don't want to get too much off your question. But the point is that we manage the feed that's going to the hens. So we choose the feed mill at this point, and we choose for the GMO or non-GMO project, it's actually a completely separate feed mill that goes through certifications. So right now it's controlled in that way. In the future, particularly with these smaller pastured houses, the mobile houses, without a doubt, we'll be changing our model, again, because of the lower capital costs, where the farmer will actually own the hens, and particularly if it's a situation with a farm that has a CSA or diversified, where they want to actually sell some of the eggs from those hens, we'll just be purchasing the eggs. And that's where it's going to get a lot, it's going to get a lot trickier. It's going to require a different type of management. We're going to have to watch to make sure they're doing what we expect of them very closely.
Robin Tartaglia, carnivore and chef. Where do your hens go when they stop laying?
It's a good question. It's always the hardest question. I love some of my competitors say they go to sanctuary. They don't go to sanctuary. Our hens, unlike baseline. Let me talk about the baseline. So white leghorn, white egg-laying hens in cages, or even brown hens in cages, typically have zero value to the egg producer. I'm not even going to say farmer. So they typically gas them and then landfill them is probably the most common method. So in our case, and they do that largely because the hens, they don't weigh a lot, there's not a lot of meat on them, and they don't even look like hens. By the time they're out of the cages, they have a few feathers hanging off here and there. And anyway, so in our housing systems, in our flocks, the hens still look like hens. They still don't weigh a lot because they're egg layers, but there is actually a market for the meat. So typically they go to live markets in New York and New Jersey, where ethnic markets, they want to buy a live chicken. And so they do meet a untimely end. We're honest about that. And of course the director is certified humane. I love her answer to that question when she's asked, or asked about meat animals that are on her program, Certified Humane. And she said, yeah, they meet an untimely end. She said, the animals on our program have one bad day in their life. And that's quite different from most farm animals.
So I think we're done with questions in terms of time-wise, but thank you very much for that.
Thank you.